Hello everyone, and welcome back to UFO Evidence. Today, we're diving deep into some of the most compelling and chilling real-life alien encounter stories ever reported. We're not just talking about blurry lights in the sky. We're talking about close encounters, face-to-face meetings, and events that have left witnesses forever changed. Are these genuine interactions with extraterrestrial beings, or something else entirely? Let's examine the evidence, and you can decide for yourself. Our first story takes us to the quiet town of Ashland, Nebraska, on a cold December night in 1967. Police officer Herbert Schirmer was on his routine patrol when he saw a strange set of red lights hovering over the highway. Thinking it was a stalled truck, he drove closer, but this was no truck. What he saw was a metallic, oval-shaped object floating just above the road. A red-orange glow emanated from its underside. Suddenly, the object shot straight up into the sky and vanished. Schirmer couldn't account for about 20 minutes of his time. He felt strangely unwell and had a red welt on his neck. Later, under hypnosis, a terrifying story emerged. He recalled being taken aboard the craft by humanoid beings. He described them as being about 4.5 to 5 feet tall, with grayish-white skin, long heads, and flat noses. Their eyes were slanted, and they had slits for mouths that never seemed to move when they communicated. He said they communicated with him telepathically, explaining they were from a nearby galaxy and were here to observe humanity. They drew power from electrical lines, which explained why they were hovering over the highway. The beings were apparently not hostile, but their examination left Schirmer deeply shaken. His case was even investigated by the Condon Committee, a government-funded UFO study, which ultimately couldn't find a conventional explanation. Next, let's travel to the Australian outback. The Knowles family case from 1988 is one of the most bizarre and frightening on record. Faye Knowles and her 3 adult sons were driving through the Nullarbor Plain at night when they were accosted by a bright, glowing object shaped like an egg. It landed on the roof of their car with a heavy thud. The family described a high-pitched sound that left them feeling disoriented and as if their brains were being sucked out. The car was lifted off the ground, shaken violently, and then dropped back down. When they finally regained full control of the car, they sped away in terror. Later, they discovered their car was covered in a strange, fine, black ash, and the roof was dented. The family members were all in a state of shock, their voices strangely altered for some time after the incident. They were ordinary people with nothing to gain from fabricating such a wild story. The physical evidence on the car, the consistency of their accounts, and their genuine terror make this a truly unsettling case. What was that object? And what did it want with them? The questions remain unanswered to this day. Now for a case that is both famous and deeply controversial. The abduction of Betty and Barney Hill in 1961. While driving through the White Mountains of New Hampshire, the couple saw a strange light in the sky that seemed to be following them. As it got closer, they could see it was a large, silent, rotating craft. Barney, looking through binoculars, claimed he could see figures in the windows looking back at them. The next thing they knew, they were miles down the road with nearly 2 hours of missing time. Over the next few weeks, both Betty and Barney suffered from anxiety, nightmares, and other physical ailments. Seeking help, they underwent hypnosis sessions separately. Their stories, which they had no conscious memory of, were remarkably similar. They described being taken aboard the craft by short, grey beings with large wrapping eyes. They were subjected to physical examinations on tables. Betty was shown a star map which she later recreated. A woman named Marjorie Fish spent years analyzing this map and found it matched a specific configuration of stars, Zeta Reticuli, which would only be visible from a certain point in space. This added a layer of incredible detail to their story. The Betty and Barney Hill case became the prototype for almost all alien abduction narratives that followed. Let's move across the Atlantic to the UK for what is often called Britain's Roswell, the Rendlesham Forest Incident. In December 1980, over several nights, US Air Force personnel stationed at RAF Woodbridge witnessed a series of unexplained events. It began when security patrolmen saw strange lights descending into the nearby Rendlesham Forest. Thinking it was a downed aircraft, they went to investigate. What they found was not a plane. They described a triangular metallic craft hovering in a clearing. It had blue and red lights and seemed to be dripping molten metal. The next day, investigators found 3 depressions in the ground where the object had landed, as well as broken tree branches. Radiation readings at the site were also significantly higher than normal background levels. 2 nights later, the lights returned. The deputy base commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, took a team into the forest to investigate personally. He recorded the entire event on a microcassette recorder. On the tape, you can hear Holt and his men reacting with panic and disbelief as they track multiple objects maneuvering in the sky, performing impossible aerial feats. At one point, a beam of light shot down from one of the objects near their feet. Colonel Holt has stood by his story for decades, and his testimony, along with that of several other military witnesses, makes this one of the most well-documented UFO cases in history. Our final story comes from a schoolyard in Ruwa, Zimbabwe in 1994. This one is unique because of the sheer number of witnesses. Over 60 children at the Ariel school reported seeing a silver disc-like craft land in a field near their playground during their morning recess. The children, aged between 6 and 12, saw one or more beings emerge from the craft. They described them as small, with thin necks, huge black eyes, and long black hair. The beings didn't speak, but many of the children reported receiving telepathic messages. These messages were primarily environmental in nature, warning them about humanity's destruction of the planet. The children were terrified, many of them crying and screaming as they ran to tell their teachers. The teachers initially dismissed it as mass hysteria. However, when the children were asked to draw what they saw, they all drew incredibly similar pictures of the craft and the beings. A Harvard psychiatrist, Dr. John Mack, traveled to Zimbabwe to interview the children. He concluded that they were not making it up and were describing a very real, and for them, very traumatic event. To this day, many of those former students, now adults, stand by their story. So, what are we to make of all this? From a lone police officer in Nebraska to a car full of people in Australia? From a couple in New Hampshire to dozens of military personnel in England and an entire school of children in Zimbabwe? These stories span continents and decades, yet they share striking similarities. The descriptions of the crafts, the appearance of the beings, the missing time, the telepathic communication, and the profound, life-altering effect on the witnesses. Are these all just elaborate hoaxes, misidentifications, or shared delusions? Or are we looking at genuine evidence of something beyond our understanding? The people involved in these cases were credible witnesses, police officers, military commanders, and ordinary families who often face ridicule and had nothing to gain from their stories. The physical evidence, like the car damage in the Knowles case or the radiation readings in Rendlesham, adds another layer of mystery. The truth is, we don't have definitive answers, but these accounts force us to ask the big questions. Are we alone in the universe? Have we been visited? And if so, why? The search for answers continues, and every story, every piece of evidence, brings us one step closer to potentially solving the greatest mystery of our time. What do you think? Which of these cases do you find most convincing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching UFO Evidence. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations into the unknown. We'll see you in the next video. Stay curious.